Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician. This podcast offers practical strategies through expert interviews and personal resilience stories, providing invaluable tools for navigating professional challenges while prioritizing well-being. Regardless of your role in healthcare, this podcast acknowledges the toll of your work on your overall health and is committed to supporting your recovery from burnout and fostering a fulfilling, sustainable career. So, if you're ready to begin a transformative journey, join us for each new episode. Together, we'll navigate challenges, celebrate successes, and build a supportive community of healthcare professionals.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Braid, and today on episode 103, we're exploring a topic that's especially relevant for high achievers: not needing to fill the gaps. If you're someone who feels uncomfortable when there's space on your schedule or think every minute needs to be productive, this episode is for you. As a burnout recovery coach, I see so many healthcare professionals and business owners who feel uneasy with stillness or downtime. Today, we'll talk about why it's so hard to sit with that empty space and how embracing buffer time can actually help you avoid and/or recover from burnout. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded. I pay my respect to the elders past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that if we're not doing something productive, we're wasting time. And this is especially true for high achievers, those of you who are always going, striving, and achieving. And look, I get it. There is a lot on in many workplaces, let alone the second shift of when we get home, and we may well have young families who need our support and need our time as well. In healthcare, this often looks like jam-packed schedules with back-to-back patients meeting and that endless paperwork. And for business owners, it could be hustling from one task to the next, thinking that success comes from squeezing every minute out of the day. But what happens when there's a gap? You might feel anxiety, guilt, or the urge to immediately fill it with something productive. But let's pause for a second. What are you really making that gap mean? Let's talk about reframing how we see white space on the calendar. Buffer time, or having an open space between tasks, is not wasted time. It's vital for recovery, reflection, and resetting your focus. Just like how muscles need to rest after exercise, your brain and body need breaks to recharge. When you try to fill every gap, you're constantly drawing from your energy reserves without giving yourself a chance to replenish. So, instead of seeing those gaps as unproductive or empty, think of them as essential breathing room to avoid burnout. Your brain really does thrive when it has time to recover. Tomorrow, I'm presenting here in Orange in a Shark Tank similar setup with the emergency spring session that's on here in Orange. So the topic is around well-being in the emergency department. It's just titled Well-being with the Sharks. And the concept that I'm sharing, which will now be historic because it's tomorrow and this podcast's airing at the end of October, is around that collegiality and that community approach of looking out for each other in the emergency department and getting that support from each other to have a break on your shift. I'm very aware that many clinicians will go 12 hours without having a bathroom break. And my simple message is #GottaPee. I'm not going to expand on that heaps in this podcast episode, but culture change can really start with the individual when they choose to have a break and use the bathroom. And that's what I often get asked about when I am doing talks. How can this shift system-wide? And I think we can start on the floor with one individual talking to another individual and getting changes there. Anyway, I'm going a bit off topic on today's podcast episode. Let's check in with your mindset around having downtime. This is where the real work comes in, changing your mindset around downtime. Many of my clients struggle with the idea that their worth is tied to how much they accomplish. If there's space in their day, they feel like they're not doing enough, they're not contributing enough, their value is not being used well enough. But this is a limiting belief. Having downtime or buffer time in your schedule doesn't mean you're lazy or inefficient. It means you're being strategic about your energy. Think about how you finish a day at work if you have had back-to-back patients or clients compared to a day at work where you've had maybe some gaps scheduled or some clients have been a no-show. Does that feel different? Do you notice the amount of energy that's gone out on those two different kind of days? It's time to ask yourself, what do you make it mean when there's a gap in your schedule? This is a really common coaching question that I use in lots of different scenarios. What am I making it mean? What do you make it mean? And that might be something you want to think about after this podcast. What story are you telling yourself about productivity and rest? So how can we make this a change on a practical basis, as well as looking at the mindset part? Practically, this could look like intentionally scheduling white space. So I often work with clients on creating a calendar that includes buffer time. So whether it's 15 minutes between meetings or a larger block of time for deep work, so that's sort of uninterrupted work or even reflection. It's about giving yourself the permission to have space without rushing to fill it. For healthcare professionals, this might mean carving out time in the middle of a busy day to pause and reset, rather than moving from one task to another without a break. For business owners, this might look like protecting a few hours in your week for creative thinking or problem solving without back-to-back tasks draining your focus. There is such value in having these times on the regular in our weeks, and for me, that is Monday. So, embracing the stillness is the next bit I want to talk about, and the stillness can be uncomfortable for people who are used to being on the go and seeing something productive for every minute of their day. But stillness is also where clarity, creativity, and renewal happen. When you allow yourself to sit in that space without rushing to fill it, you open the door to more intentional work and avoid the trap of constant hustle. I want to challenge you this week to embrace the gaps in your schedule and not feel the need to fill every moment. Notice how it feels. Are you more present? Are you more energized? And how does this new perspective affect the way you approach your work? To wrap up, I want to remind you that not needing to fill every gap in your schedule is a powerful tool for burnout prevention, and it's a great approach for burnout recovery. It's about valuing your well-being as much as you value your productivity. And when you start seeing buffer time as a strategic investment in yourself, you'll notice a difference in how you feel and perform. So this week, I encourage you to start small. Create white space in your schedule and give yourself the gift of rest and reflection. And on that note, I'm off for my lunch break for my time away from this computer before my next commitment. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear how you're planning to incorporate more buffer time into your day. You can reach out to me on social media or through my website. Remember, protecting your asset, yourself, starts with allowing space for recovery. Until next time, take care of you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. If there's someone in your world who would also benefit from this, please share it with them. Remember, you're not alone, and there is hope for a brighter, more fulfilling future. Let's continue this journey together, one episode at a time. For more resources, including how to move from dread to delight, head to drjoebraid.com.